And welcome to Advantage Radio Ministries and welcome to Second Chances here at Lift FM. My name is Greg Hennis, and this is our weekly program where we are privileged and honored to have with us people from all walks of life. And this particular week, we are privileged to have with us a couple of really wonderful musicians. You may know them as a group, you may know one of them as an individual, but you also may know them all together. And we're talking about Baz McGuire of Baz 288. And you are not only joined, Baz, by yourself, but who did you bring along with you today?
I brought my bass player, Mike DeMora, who's also my social media expert.
Ah, okay, so he's the guy that does like all the Facebook posts and all that kind of stuff?
He's the guy that does the videos and all those things that confuse me and make me scratch my head. He's willing and able to do all those things for us, so he's an important member of the group.
All right, Mike, so obviously there's Baz and there's you, but who else is not with us today?
Mark Breckenridge, who's our drummer, and Mikey Stark. There's no relation to Tony Stark, although we think so. And Vince Odessa, who's on vacation in Cancun or somewhere tropical, so we're jealous.
Yeah, I would be too, especially after the last several weeks we've had. Of course, this program is recorded a few weeks ahead of time, but last couple of weeks he knew when to get away, right?
Well, he's there now, yes.
Yeah, he knew when to get away. All right, so Baz, we're going to start off with you. Throughout this program, we're going to hear some music, a lot of good music. You'll probably tell some stories about the music, but the place I always like to start, I'm going to hand you the microphone and let you share this. I'm going to have you do this, and I'm going to have Mike do it after a song or two. I want you to share your testimony with us on, since it is a show called Second Chances, how you came to the Lord. So I'm going to pass you the mic and share us.
Wow, that's a Second Chances. What a great name. So I'll try and keep it as brief as I can. I'm 53 years old and lived for the first 44 years kind of on my own power, or what I thought was my own power. Came from a family background that's a little dysfunctional, or maybe a lot dysfunctional. And decided that I didn't want that in my life. So I found a girl, and we dated, and we got engaged, and we got married, and we bought a home, and we made babies, 4 of them, and they're all in their 20s now, and started a business. And by all intents and by all worldly measures, I was a successful person, except in the busyness of life and all those kids. It's easy to become distant and isolated from one another, and I'm speaking of the marriage covenant, and was in the computer industry and found myself with a really serious online pornography addiction, and the Lord used that to kind of kick me off my pedestal because it became a public matter that this addiction was there. And nearly cost me, it cost me my business, nearly cost me my marriage, but God was very gracious to me, knocked me down in the mud for a couple of years, dragged me around, put me in the employ of a Christian man, whom I worked for 2 years before coming clean with him, and kept my marriage together, kept my family together, and this gentleman was in the same field. I spent 30 years in the IT field, and after 2 years of working for him, I got up one day, and actually, on a Sunday evening, I stood in my bathroom. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I stood in my bathroom. I had been listening to Christian music. I had Christian people surrounding me, telling me who God was, listening to a lot of Ravi Zacharias podcasts, and the story just all added up intellectually. And looking at myself in the mirror, but talking to a God that I believed was probably there, or coming to the point of believing it was there. And I said, all right, if you're real, I need to see that you're real. Show me someone who walks this way. Show me a Christian person who actually, when their feet are held to the fire, walks this way. That was on a Sunday night. Monday morning I got up, said goodbye to my wife, and I told her I'll see you in a little while. She said, well, what does that mean? Because usually I'd say I'll see you tonight. I said, well, I can't lie to this man anymore. This man needs to know my background. And we worked and lived all in the same town, and I just thought, this isn't the kind of guy I want. I don't want him to hear this in a roundabout way. He needs to hear this, because he had entrusted me with. I was the general manager of his company, So I went to work that day and told him everything, and his first reaction was he apologized to me, which blew my mind. And he said, "Hey, I'm sorry you had to carry that burden for 2 years. That must have been tough." And then he showed me absolute, complete forgiveness. I mean, I basically walked in this man's office and said, you know, the reason I told you I left my company, all that behind, was a lie. And here's what's really going on. And I was assuming, you know, 5 minutes later I'd be cleaning out my desk, and that was not the case at all. And I remember sitting in his office, and he said, "You know what? There, but for the grace of God, go I, and I'm not your judge." So all that led up to that moment, and his name was Frank, and I said, "Frank, I don't know if there's some dance or secret handshake you do, but I've come to know what the sinner's prayer is, and I'm ready. I'm going in." And got on my knees in his office and accepted Christ into my life, and that was 9 years ago, and it's been a whirlwind ever since.
You say two things that just kind of stood out to me about your second chance. One of them is dysfunctional family. Now, I got to tell you, every family, if you really are honest about it, every family has a form of dysfunction. Am I right, Mike?
Not mine.
Oh, okay. But, of course, yeah, of course. And the other thing that you said, which, you know, it's interesting you bring this up because this is like the second time that I've heard this in as many weeks, so it's worth mentioning to our listeners that behind every good man and behind every walk with the Lord is a man that stood up and loved somebody and really mentored them. And that's really, you know, you didn't get into many specifics, but what you said was this guy was a Christian man and he stood by you. But really probably what he did, if you really thought about it, was over those 2 years, you probably learned a lot of Christian principles by seeing them demonstrated from him, which ended up being a mentorship in a lot of ways for you. Am I right?
100%. I mean, the way he interacted with his family, the way he conducted himself, was part of what led me to say there was something about him that I could no longer hide from, that I could no longer lie to. There was something about his character and his integrity.
It was the light.
I didn't know what that was at the time, and I didn't know. You know, I mean, when I. You know, what I see today as a prayer was me standing in my bathroom kind of drawing a line in the sand to God, which is pretty bold, but, you know, like Moses saying, "All right, now show me your glory." You know, God even respects those moments of boldness and says, "All right, I see where your heart's going, so I'll show you my glory. I'm going to hide you in a rock so you don't burn up." But I hear you.
Well, I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you know the Lord, best thing you can do is sow yourself into somebody else. That's the truth. A great example of it, I know if you look at your life as a Christian and you say, well, these are probably the happiest times, I bet you if you looked at it, you would probably discover that's because you were mentoring somebody. So we're going to get to a song here in just a minute. I want to ask one question, but I got to mention somebody. We got to mention our good friend, Bill Dempsey, because he made all this happen. He was the guy on the phone saying, "Greg, when can we get on? Greg, when can we get on?" So we want to say thank you to him. I know he's the silent guy in the band, but he's been the most vocal to make all this happen, correct?
Absolutely. And I met Bill a year and a half maybe ago, and he was working with another band and just kind of winding things down, and I thought, man, we could use a guy to help us get us booked. And at that time he said, "You know what, there's a lot of things that need my attention." So I respected the fact that he stepped back and said, "No, my marriage, elderly parent, all these things needed attention." And maybe it was 4 months later, I got an email or a call and said, "Hey, this is Bill. Remember we talked, and let's have coffee. Let's continue the conversation." And we're here because of him. You know.
Now, your life outside of music, you're a salesman, Mike. You're a salesman outside of music, right?
Entrepreneur.
Okay. Well, obviously, I know he's the silent guy, but Bill, in a lot of ways, is a salesman too because he got my attention. Anyway, guys, one question I'm going to ask you this, Mike, and then we're going to come back and visit with you on the other side because we're going to let you sing. Difference between 2015, 2016 with 288. Any difference from last year to this year?
Oh, tremendous.
Tell us.
Well, the band kind of went through some personnel changes. The original bass player, he was one of the founding members, wound up transferring to Hawaii. All these guys go to exotic places.
My heart bleeds for him.
I know. And the original guitar player had to take some time away. So there was a little bit of a change in personnel, and that's when I had stepped in. I had known Barry for years and years and years. Secretly, I always wanted the gig.
Ah.
Yeah. And Mark, who's we just like my favorite drummer to play with, and we have this young kid. I say he's young. I just learned recently he's only 19. You know, I told him I got socks, I think, older than that. But he's a great player. He's got a heart for the Lord, and we're just, kind of blessed by that. And we have this mad scientist of a keyboard player who's really a virtuoso player. So it's the best band I've ever been with, music-wise, talent-wise. We all get along. So these trips down here are just they're fun.
That's great. All right, Baz, we're going to stick the microphone in front of you here and give us a little song, tell us the story behind it, and Mike and time is all yours.
All right. Well, I actually left the IT world beginning of 2015, and now I'm a musician. I'm a starving musician full time, and but I consider myself, also a songwriter. I write a lot, and today I see most things that happen in life, or most thoughts that come to my head, I think somewhere in there's got to be a song. And obviously my experiences with the Lord and with my faith are always spawning new songs and new ideas. And at some part in the early part of 2015, I had spent some time, because I felt that even though my walk was strong and my faith was strong, there were still places where I needed I needed to let the Lord in. And one of those places was, I come to learn about halfway through the year, was my heart. There were still places in my heart from wounds from the past which I hadn't yet let the Lord into. And he very gently, took me through Scripture and showed me examples of him working on people's hearts. And, and through the Ezekiel passage, I believe it's Ezekiel 6:36, might be Ezekiel 5:36, where he talks about taking our stone heart and giving us a heart of flesh. And I was witnessing that and feeling that happen in my life. So I wanted to honor the Lord in song, and wrote a song called This Stone Heart, which kind of takes us from where I was and the things that I was struggling with to the Lord, kind of breaking down those walls. And like David, coming to the point where I could just worship the Lord in an undignified manner, and just kind of let loose. So this song was the result or the product of having gone through that. And this is called This Stone Heart. 2, 3, 4. This stone heart never let me see just how far you would come for me, though I ran. You never gave up hope, now I stand, wearing crimson robes, covered by the blood of your precious Son. Yeah. Oh, this stone heart made me push away the one love you had sent to save, and I fought the outstretched hands of grace, 'cause I thought this wretch could find no way. Turns out I was wrong, and you knew all along that stone hearts crumble as we humble them to perfect love. Yeah, hearts start beating after meeting you. Oh, hearts start beating after meeting you. This stone heart, oh, it never stood a chance. Once I found that I was made to dance before you, oh, lover of my soul. And when I moved, oh, the cracks began to show. Now I'm undignified, 'cause your spirit lives inside. Oh, stone hearts crumble when we humble them to perfect love. Yeah, hearts start beating after meeting you. Oh, hearts start beating after meeting you. So break this heart of stone. I've held it for too long. I'll make for you a throne from the rubble that was left here when my stone heart crumbled. As I humbled it to perfect love, it started beating after meeting you. Oh, it started beating after meeting you. Oh, stone hearts crumble when we humble them to perfect love. Yeah, hearts start beating after meeting you. Oh, hearts start beating after meeting you. Oh, hearts start beating after meeting you. Yeah, hearts start beating after meeting you. Oh, 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 oh.
You are listening to a special Second Chances here at Lift FM. This is our weekly program, and today we are privileged to not only visit with Baz McGuire, but we're also visiting with Mike DeMora. I have to look at the cheat sheet here to get it right. Both, of course, encompass a part of the band 288, and, of course, Baz does perform on his own. But, Mike, before the song, which, by the way, we're really blessed by that song, we had told our audience that we're going to give you an opportunity to share your second chance, your testimony, because really that's what it's all about when you really come down to it. The reason that we all do what we do in ministry, whether it's perform music or do radio shows or, mentor people, is to really provide light to the lost and encourage those that are saved and maybe struggling. And a lot of times I find that what we say as people really encourages others that might be listening. So I'm going to pass you the mic, Mike, no pun intended, and kind of let you go and share your story with us.
Well, thank you. Don't you hate when you start with
Well, you got it out of the way.
I came to the Lord now over 12 years ago, and it was a time, probably the darkest part of my life. I had recently been separated from my wife, and prior to that, I was one of these guys who I did not believe. I would probably sit here with as much as I could muster and talk down anybody who believed or had faith or believed in God or Jesus and went to church. I thought those people were weak and foolish, and I would, with missionary zeal, combat that. So when it was my turn, I was actually, remember right where I was in New York City at the Beacon Theater at a Mavis Staples show with Al Green, and I was listening to these songs, and somehow I felt like they were just singing to me, and I just knew something was going on, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And I was at the show with a friend of mine who was a believer, and during the intermission, we went outside, and he had noticed that something was going on with me, and so he asked me, he goes, what's going on? I said, I don't know, but something's happening. And he seized the moment and said to me, well, do you think this is all an accident? And I was like, well, what, New York? He says, well, think a little bigger. How about like the Earth, the universe? And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe, it could be. He says, well, if this is all just random, and keep in mind, I was one of these people, I needed facts. I needed, empirical data so I could say, yes, I can believe in this. So he said, well, okay, with that same logic, a tornado can come ripping through a junkyard and in its wake leave behind a completely constructed 747. Bam, that was it. That just did it. At that point, I knew I had to get right with God. And I went looking for, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know what to do. I went looking for a church. I literally stumbled into this church that was right down the block from my house. And I walked in, and the first thing I noticed was like, well, where's the stained glass? And then a guy came on stage, and he was kind of dressed just like you are right now. And I'm like, well, where's the robes, and where's that? And maybe this guy is just going to talk, and he's like a precursor. And then I realized after this guy talking, well, he's the man. He is talking. And then I started listening to the words that he was talking about. And I go, why is this guy talking to me? Like, did somebody send him a memo? Like, how does he know I'm here? And later that day, I'm on my knees, and I'm accepting the Lord. So it was, in a way, like a Paul-like conversion. I went from one side to the other and never walked back.
So the next obvious question is, as you look back at that time, 12 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What was the first big change that you saw in Mike's life?
Well, it was everything. I mean, I couldn't pinpoint. I really was different, and everybody noticed it. Like, people were coming up to me and going like, okay, where's Mike, and what did you do with the old guy? And we like this new guy, by the way. So everything, my viewpoint was completely different. So everything about me had changed. I mean, there's still things in me that haven't changed, and I'm still working those through. Still a work in progress, I guess, like we all are. But everything, the way I viewed people, the way I talked, my treatment towards others, because I was in business. I was in the business world, so I was very ruthless. I was very cutthroat, take no prisoners, and that just it dissolved. I mean, that dissolved like an ice cube in June. So
it's tougher to be in business when you're convicted. And what's right and wrong. As a Christian man, I get that, because there's a lot of people that aren't convicted, and they don't care what they do. We care what we do.
Oh, the conviction came in like this 300-pound bag. So I'm still in my business now, working through. It's been years to change things, change an environment, change a whole structure of a business. No, we can't do that. And, it's funny, sometimes people will say, well, why don't we just do this? And I go, we can't do that. And they go, why? I said, well, because it's not the truth. And they go, well, what? But everybody else does that. I go, that doesn't matter.
We're not everybody else.
Doesn't matter.
We're visiting with 288 Baz McGuire and Mike DeMoro. DeMoro, actually, of the band 288. So, Baz, I know that the silent members over there, and ultimately that's who you have to talk to. But if someone would like to set up to have 288 come and perform, Baz and 288 come perform at their coffee house or their event, how does that happen? Do they have to pick up the phone? Is there an email? What's the story?
The best way to reach us is through one of two websites, and we have a band website and a solo website. So the band website is 288band.com. And then the Baz site is Baz McGuire, McGuire.com. And on both, there are forms you can fill out to say, hey, give us a call. We'd like to have you come. Electronic press kits, those kinds of things. So we're, and then from those websites, you can launch out to all the other Facebook, Twitter, all those things that Mike so graciously populates with material. And I get people call and say, "Hey, the video looks great," and I'll think like, "Oh, Dr. Mike's at it again," because
Dr. Mike.
Dr. Mike, Uncle Mike. Once we got our new guitar player in the band, whose name is Mike, and despite the fact he is young, we didn't have the heart to call him Mikey. That's what he was called growing up. So he became Mike. So now we're trying to settle on, is it Uncle Mike, Dr. Mike? So he's got a few names, floating around right now.
Well, here's the deal. I love doing this format. The more I do the bands, the more I love it. It's just a lot of fun. It's great to hear the music. Here's the problem. We've talked too much. I want to give you a chance to play a little more music. Let's say we've got 3.5 minutes. I want to allow a little time. Give us a shortened version of the song because we've got to end the program with a sinner's prayer, okay? So, Baz and 288, you're on.
2, 3, 4. I spent many years on the other side of salvation. Lord, I pray on this side there's many more to live. But that old man comes back seeking compensation. And he wants far more credit than I am willing to give. Oh, and he's stronger than me, and he's hell-bent on defeat. Yeah, my back is up against the wall, and so I call. Oh, can you hear me, Lord? Can you hear? Shouting, singing, crying, screaming, hoping, praying. I'm not just saying, can you hear me, Lord? Oh, I spent many years on the other side of salvation. Though the years on this side are sweeter in your light, that old man comes back seeking confrontation. And he arrives just when I'm too weak to fight. Oh, and he's stronger than me, and he's hell-bent on defeat. Yeah, my back is up against the wall, and so I call. Oh, can you hear me, Lord? Can you hear me, Lord? Oh, my shouting, singing, crying, screaming, hoping, praying. All I'm saying, can you hear me, Lord?
And of course, Baz, the most important part of the program is for those people that maybe have gotten on that wrong road or maybe have never gotten on the right road to walk with the Lord. They just need somebody that's got the guts to pray with them, to say, you know what, come into my life, help me out, Lord. They just need somebody to lead them in a word of prayer. And Baz, since you're the leader of 288, we would love to give you that honor if you would go ahead and lead our listeners that are ready to accept the Lord. Give them a chance.
Amen. So I think probably the easiest way to explain um, explain this is that our sin, and you could, whether you believe that sin is alive or not, it is. And sin has separated us from our Creator. And what our Creator wants to do, and the reason why Christ came to this earth, was to restore our relationship with the Father, with God, with our Creator. And if you've come to the place where you realize that your life is out of control, your life is maybe without anything that has meaning. If you've come to the place where you realize that all the things that the world has said will make you whole or will make you happy just are hollow and just aren't getting the job done, that's great that you've come to that place, because that means that the truth is ready to unleash. So it's really a simple prayer where you recognize the fact that the God who created you is real, that you have been separated from him through your sin, that he sent his son Christ here to the earth as a man to live a life as an example to us, and to die on a cross to take our sin and the consequences of our sin to the grave with him. And he overcame that death by rising 3 days later, to put your trust and to give your life over in your heart over to that Jesus Christ, and accept him into your life as your Savior. And it's a very hard thing to surrender our lives, especially if we live independently, but it's what's required. And all I can say is 44 years on the other side of salvation, the 9 since. I'm 53 years old, and I see nothing but hope, and I am excited about what's to come. I'm not winding down at all, and that's because of Jesus Christ in my life. So if you speak these words with your mouth, but more importantly, believe in your heart that you want to surrender your life over to Christ, that's all it takes, is to ask Jesus to come into your life. And then get yourself to a Bible-believing church. You probably know somebody who's a follower of Christ in your life. Ask them, where do you get plugged in? Because the awesome thing is that that decision to make Christ the King of your life starts a journey which has so much blessing. It's got struggle, but to face those struggles and to face everything that's going to come against you in your life, to face that knowing that God has your back and Jesus Christ is walking alongside you, and in fact has prepared the way for you. I can't imagine another way to live after having made that decision. So,
our guest on Second Chances once again has been Baz McGuire and Mike DeMora of the band 288. And Baz, one more time, if they'd like to reach out to the band, find out more information, how to either schedule you solo or 288, how does that happen?
288band.com for the band, and BazMcGuire.com for me, Baz. And you can all of our dates are listed on both websites, so you can reach out to us through either one. It'll all come to myself and Bill Dempsey, our silent member here, who does all our booking, and we'll be sure to reach out to you.
And we want to thank you for listening to Second Chances. Tune in next week for more Second Chances right here from Advantage Radio Ministries on Lift FM.